Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate Rural Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, I'm always excited to interview someone. And with me today is such an exceptional person. I have phenomenal guests on. I learn from everyone. And my guest today, I hope he doesn't blush, but he's such a kind, compassionate man who has a heart of gold, as far as I'm concerned, to help others. And he's very humble about it. And I want the world to know about my guest, Peter Istvan, who has a Ph.D., an MBA. He is the owner and headshot photographer at Peter Istvan Photography. He has a diverse background spanning public and private health care and entrepreneurial businesses. He has a Ph.D. in neurophysiology. He worked in the U.S. also, and I'm going to ask him about that, and was Director of Corporate Services at the West Parry Sound Health Center. And Peter is involved in so many different causes. He's also a beekeeper. He is involved in About Face, the Headshot Project, which is phenomenal. He does fat biking. You can see it on YouTube. He is involved in a virtual reality project. We're going to talk about that. And Peter did a bike ride called Jack Ride to focus on mental health for youth. We need that, folks. Mental health is a global crisis all over. And he also is involved with biking for Parkinson's. And I just so thrilled to talk to you. And he's currently serves as Executive Director of Parry Sound Family Health Care, health team. Can't even read my own handwriting. But I want to welcome you, Peter Istvan, to Chatting with Betsy.
Hey, Betsy. Real pleasure to be with you today. Thanks so much.
Oh, you are welcome. Wow, you are one busy fellow, I'll tell you that. And I really want to encourage the audience, and it will be in the blog notes, to go on Peter's website and read about him and all the projects that he's involved with, and find out how, if you're up in that area or even the U.S., how you could be involved. But I have to ask you, Peter, I'm going to start off with this. Did you find a difference working in the U.S. versus Canada?
Hey, Betsy. Well, good question. So we moved there back in 2000. For a job, I was working in a field called interoperative monitoring. I won't bore you with the details of that, but we lived just outside in Fairfax, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. To answer your question, there were some surprises I had when moving from Canada to the U.S. So one of them was, for example, it took me forever to get a credit card, because even though I had a credit card for close to 20 years, the credit history systems between U.S. and Canada didn't talk with each other. Or another example, I was charged high insurance rates on my driver's license because I was considered a new driver in the U.S. So there's all these sort of unexpected little things. But in reality, I was working in the field of healthcare, so of course there were some differences in the setup and structure like that. But I mean, that's boring for another conversation another time. But we lived in a great neighborhood. It turned out we ended up living about a kilometer or a couple miles from a friend that we already had. So we had some great friendships in our community, where our kids were 2 years old and 0 at the time. We just waited till my son was just born. So we were able to have a great experience with our neighborhood and our friends that we met there. So other than that, it wasn't really different. We were there also during some interesting times, 9/11 being one of the paramount times, because we lived not too far from the Pentagon. So that was a very pivotal time to be living in the U.S. during 9/11, and then and there was a lot of experiences with that. And then I don't know if you recall there's a sniper shooter on the Baltimore Beltway, and we were living in the U.S. at that time. So that was interesting to experience that, because we didn't certainly hadn't had that certainly in Canada, but I mean, of course those can happen anywhere in the world. But it wasn't. So that was a long answer to your question. At the end of the day, it wasn't really that different, because we were surrounded by great people in a wonderful neighborhood. So we had an awesome time when we were living in the U.S.
Oh, that's great. I know I faced a cultural difference living in Tennessee for almost 3 years. From New Jersey to Tennessee, because in New Jersey, it's very fast-paced. People don't talk to you. In Tennessee, it's slower. People talk to you. And, a guy will pull out your chair. And I'm like, what are you doing with my chair? So when you're talking to me, do I know you? So there's some differences. How about, like, corporate-wise in the work culture? Is there any difference?
Yeah, no, not really. Not across the different experiences I've had in different sectors and organizations. Not really that I could say, this is like a U.S. kind of company versus a Canadian company. I didn't experience that myself. It's at the end of the day, I worked in great, organizations that were trying to, because of my career has been in healthcare primarily and education. We're trying to do things to help and make a difference in people's lives. So it was. I can't speak to any great differences between the culture of companies in the U.S. versus Canada.
And how did you get interested in photography? And I have to say, folks, you have to check out Peter's photography, because it is the most beautiful, stunning photography I have ever seen. And I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to Peter. I have looked at Peter's photographs, and Peter, you have such a talent.
Well, thank you.
How did you, like I want to know, when did you start, and how did you know that you were so talented in that?
Well, I started probably. My dad was in photography. My dad was a physician, but as a hobby, he was interested in photography. So I probably gleaned some interest from him, certainly. And I'm old enough to remember the days when he would bring home some slides, and as a family, we would run around and get the slide projector set up, and go through the experience. I remember those days. And making sure. And I always got in trouble if I just put the slide in upside down. But so it was probably through my dad that I initially got interested in photography, and I've had a camera in my hand ever since. However, more interested in the headshot photography, which is my business focus. A number of years ago, I started helping a friend here in Parkinson, where I live, as a second shooter in weddings, and that was kind of fun because I had the opportunity just to take the casual shots during a wedding after she was set up taking the main shots. And we went to a conference, a photography conference, and photography is like a lot of things where there's subspecialties. So whether you be a real estate photographer, architecture, boudoir, family, wedding, etc., there's the one aspect is the headshot photography. And I saw a presentation by Peter Hurley, who's a very well-known headshot photographer in the world, and I was just mesmerized by the photos that he was showing of people's faces. And so I just remember thinking, I'd like to try and do that. So since then, I've had a lot of education through the headshot crew that Peter Hurley runs, and through developing other meaningful relationships with other photographers to help develop my technique and the knowledge behind whether it be the lighting or expressions and things like that. And what I really appreciate with headshot photography is the opportunity to connect with a person on a different level, because most people, generally speaking, but 99.9% of the people don't like having their photo taken, and it puts them in a vulnerable state to be in front of a camera. So just having that opportunity to connect with them in a meaningful way. And really, Betsy, at the end of the day, when we're taking photos, it's basically I have a conversation with someone, and there just happens to be a camera in between me and them, and I'm taking a photo here and there just to capture the real them in an image. So it's just been a wonderful experience, and I've had lots of great opportunities to capture images of people in all kinds of different settings.
It is stunning. I have to ask you, how was it because I saw a picture, folks, of a woman with a snake around her neck. How is that, the experience?
Yeah. She brought in a yellow reticulated python, which I learned about. So she was a fun client. So she actually brought a few other things with her because that's her business is she has about 100 exotic animals. She didn't bring all of them, but she brought a few, and that's what she does is her business is bring them to, for example, a school and have a display, or not display, but a session with students or whatever, but different animals. So she brought this reticulated python. She brought a tarantula, and then she had other couple small snakes, and then a parrot. And well, it was fine, Betsy, at the end of the day, because I did touch the snake. I didn't actually wrap the snake around myself either, but the snake was just kind of curious. It was pretty mellow, and obviously she was super talented in being able to control. Not that the snake needed any control, but it was sort of a fun thing. And that was the first time I've had a snake that large, and probably me being that close to it. So it was fun. It was a fun event for her.
I said, when I saw that picture, I said, that is really cool. And I have to ask Peter how that experience was when I interview you, because I look at your pictures probably daily, because you post daily on Facebook and LinkedIn, and it's just the only way I could describe it, folks. You have to look at the pictures, but it is just stunning how you make people laugh, their expressions. You must be very talented behind the camera to get that reaction, because you're right. I know I don't like getting my picture taken. I don't, never liked getting my picture taken when I was in school, the yearly pictures or group pictures. So what tricks do you use to get people to relax and just show their true expression?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I don't say is relax, because in the history of people saying relax, that never works. Well, that's really just to reiterate a little bit what I said. I mean, when the person first walks into my studio, it's not immediately going in front of the camera. We sit down and chat for a bit, and I just get to know them a little bit about whether they have kids, what their work is, what their favorite things to do is, what they're doing on the weekend, what kind of podcasts, and just ask some sort of basic questions like that. And then when I have a sense that they're ready, well, I don't know if they're ever ready, but when I have a sense, okay, maybe we should move to the taking the photos, then we basically continue having that conversation when they're standing behind the camera, and then to elicit some expressions. I mean, I'll say something. Well, you might say, well, that's a stupid thing to say, but I say some things. Hey, just make a ridiculous face, kind of thing. Or I bring up. I once asked this woman, hey, who's your favorite grandchild? And she just started bursting out laughing, kind of thing. So it's just saying things like that. I mean, not crazy, because as a headshot photographer, we all have our own personalities, and it's trying to sync your personality with the person that's in front of you. So it's not, it's relatable. But really it is trying to gauge, have an authentic experience for the person, and just trying to make them feel comfortable and feel relaxed, but not using those words during the course of the headshot session.
Well, you're different then, because you're not what I call assembly line. Right. You are getting to know the person, which makes them feel more relaxed with you, because you're asking questions about them, and then you're using that to make them smile or laugh during their photography session, rather than, when you book an appointment in one of these photo places and it's just mass production. Right. You sit there, click, click, click. I know with getting the kids' pictures taken, every year when I worked in preschool, it was just, next. You have to hurry up, and you're not really getting like a true essence of that person. And where is Perry Sound for the audience to know?
Sure. So Perry Sound is a body of water that's off Georgian Bay, and we are north of Toronto, so 2 hours driving north of Toronto, in a beautiful part of the world.
Yes, it does look beautiful. from what I saw on your pictures and on YouTube. And I know I mentioned that you pedal, but I forgot to mention that in 2011 you co-founded Pedaling for Parkinson's charity ride, with 100% of the funds go to Parkinson's research. I applaud you for that. And how did you get involved with that?
Yeah, so a good friend of mine, as in, longtime friend, childhood friend, he and I had participated in a number of different charity rides over the years prior to that, and it was in that February of 2011 we were thinking about what ride were we going to do this year, and it was about around that time that a neighbor of mine came over and told me that he was just diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he was at the time maybe around 50, so it was pretty devastating news for him and his family and me. And my good friend Dave, my co-founder, his dad had Parkinson's already and was well known, and so we thought, okay, why don't we try and find a Parkinson's ride that we could ride in to support the cause? And so we looked around, and there wasn't one. Like, we couldn't find one in Canada. I think there may have been one in the U.S. at the time. So we naively said, okay, well, why don't we just start one? So we contacted Parkinson's Canada, and they were willing to help us to support, to get us started. So on our first day, so we did a 3-day ride back in 2011. And our first day we had 3 riders. We had myself, Dave, and another guy. And then the next day we had a few more. We had 5 riders, and on day 3 we had about 20 riders. And over that, based on the distances we rode each day, we figured roughly we would have covered 100 pedal strokes and 100,000 pedal strokes, representing one person with Parkinson's in Canada. So in that first year, we raised $18,000, which was about $17,900 more than I thought we would ever raise, which was pretty incredible. And so that was in 2011. Then over the next 7 years, we were able to grow it with more riders and more donations. And after 8 years, we were able to raise over $1.7 million, and 100% of that went into research, because we were pretty clear with, and Parkinson's Canada was great to work with. They said, hey, we'll raise this money, but we just wanted to go to research and nothing else. And they were 100% great, fantastic partners in making that happen. And our last ride in 2018, over the course of the 3 days, because we kept it at 3 days, we had about 300 riders. So we went from 3 to 300 over 8 years and $1.7 million. It was a wonderful thing to be part of.
Wow, that is wonderful. And if anybody wants to participate, they can just contact you.
Well, I'll say yes. Since 2018, it's gone through Pedaling for Parkinson's Canada has gone through a couple of different evolutions. Parkinson's Canada now has it as part of their corporate programming. Parkinson's Canada typically they still do, what's called a Parkinson's Walk, but they've now added disability, or they still call it Pedaling for Parkinson's, which is great, a ride component. So yes, they can. And now in the U.S., I can't remember Davis Finney. He used to ride on the Tour de France. He has Parkinson's, and he may have a couple rides in the U.S. I'm not as familiar as I'm chatting with you today, Betsy, about what rides might be available in the U.S. for people involved with Parkinson's, but there certainly are some opportunities in Canada.
Wow, that's great to know. And if anyone in the U.S. wants to go to Canada and ride, that's great. And I'm a big mental health advocate, and I'd like to commend you and applaud you also for writing and bringing awareness to mental health, especially among the youth. How did you get involved with that? Because when I saw that, I have to tell you, Peter, it brought me to tears, because mental health has such a stigma for so long. COVID brought it out in the open, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I struggled with depression as a teenager, and when I went to see a counselor when I was 16, that was not popular in 1974. That right. I was shamed, for going for help. and we should not shame people for going for support. We all need support at some time in our life. And thank you for doing that. But I'd like to know, how did you get involved with that?
Well,
I'm nosy.
Any question is available on the table, Betsy. I'm happy to talk about anything. So, well, I mean, as I mentioned, I've worked in healthcare for a while now, and certainly well aware of, just as you alluded to, the crisis of mental health, not only for youth, but as well as adults. And
yes.
I mean, you know, what can you say? There's just so much around that. So to answer your question, so Jack's ride, the one I participated in, is specific to mental health because Jack, who was a young man, I think it was about 15 years ago. I learned about this through my reading about Jack Wright. It was a young male, committed or died by death by suicide back in his university days, and his parents, as a way to do something, so to speak. I don't want to oversimplify it. I mean, the tremendous amount of work they've done seemingly over the last 15 years has started this ride, and they have all kinds of different elements to what their programming is to create awareness around youth and mental health. So that message really resonated with me as well. I'll say in my circle of friends, haven't been touched directly by suicide, but indirectly, certainly in our small community of Parry Sound, we've had a couple of death by suicides, and it's been, well, it's traumatic no matter where it happens, but in a small community, it certainly is really quite devastating on so many different levels. So there was that, and then there's a group here in town called Sound Youth Counseling, and the counselors that are involved with that, and again, as the name implies, their focus is around providing mental health for the youth. And just as I learn more about their organization and learn more about just the crisis for youth in our community. I mean, our town is only, well, it depends where do the boundary, but it's about 20,000 people. I mean, it's just a snapshot of what's probably happening across the nation, across the U.S., across the world kind of thing. So all these sort of factors kind of lined up that I was able to participate in this ride this year, and to again create a little awareness. And I decided to write that article just as well. Two things. One, I mean, it was an opportunity for me to learn more about some of the numbers and the scope of the crisis, but then, help create a little bit of awareness of it as well.
Yes, that was very touching. Yes, suicide is a problem in the U.S. also.
Yes.
It's, with young people, older people, professional people. It's really devastating. And so I want to, thank you again for raising awareness on that. And I'm also interested, because I read on your website about the About Face, the Headshot Project.
Right.
That is, Peter, I'm going to say you are the man, because you do so much to bring awareness to people. Tell us about that project.
Sure. So a friend of mine's daughter, she posted something on LinkedIn because she was involved. I can't remember exactly what capacity. I think as a board member about this organization with About Face. So I thought, what's that? And it's an organization across Canada, and I think so far as I know, they're just across Canada, that are involved with people that have facial differences. So facial difference either from birth or through an injury or however they are defining for themselves a facial difference. And I was thinking, well, wow, I'm not sure challenge is the right word, but what an interesting opportunity to take pictures of photos with people with facial differences. Because I was thinking, as you said a few minutes ago, you don't like having your photo taken. So I thought this might be an interesting opportunity. And the reason I say that is because I've had the experience. I mean, some people come into the studio because they just need a headshot for a website or whatever. But I have had the experience, and this may sound a little drastic, but it was a transformative experience for people when they finally see a good photo of themselves. That I think of one woman that burst out into tears after she's joys of happiness, not of of sadness because of her photo. And this other woman I took a photo of. She had a from birth defect in her hand, or slight deformity, and she was going through this time in her life where she had just changed jobs, changing cities, changing her partner, having a divorce, and so all this change going on. And she said at one point, "Hey, do you want to somehow incorporate my hand in the photo?" And it just came very naturally. And again, it was at the end of the day, it was a photo that she was so empowered by, and those are some of the words that she was using. So when I saw this or learned about this About Face organization, I thought, well, maybe that would be somebody would be interested in that too. So I worked with another photographer in Toronto, so just south of me, and we used her studio. We worked collaboratively with About Face, and we had 5 or 6 clients come in, and it was all complimentary to do, and it was awesome because this one guy, Duncan, I mean, he was a real character. He's an 18-year-old. He had a lot of fun poses that he was pulling out. But at the end of the session, he said, this is one of the best experiences I've had, because again, it goes back to what I said, somewhat was alluding to earlier, was just being able to connect with him on a human level, and just taking a few photos with him as he was standing in front of my camera. And then since then, the About Face is a national cross-Canada organization. They connected with another photographer in Calgary, out west towards the Rockies, because they have a group of people out there as well, and he took some photos of some people out there that are connected with About Face. So it was kind of cool to see it go, I'll say, across the country, and we're still in touch about whether we're going to do it again this year or next year. But it was certainly been a wonderful opportunity to most importantly, to give the clients that came in a great experience and make them feel a little bit better about themselves or happier, and but also create some awareness for this group of About Face. So it's been fun.
Yes. It's beautiful. The photographs are just beautiful. They're stunning, and I was deeply touched by looking at them, and I said, "Wow, this is so amazing." And we have to, as a society, need to accept people for what's inside and not just what's on the outside.
Yeah.
And so many times we judge.
Yeah. Well, and coincidentally, that week I had just sent some photos back to a client, and she was happy with the photos, but she had also responded, "Hey, can you reduce this wrinkle in my?" When you smile, you get these little crows by your eyes, and it just was such a juxtaposition for me, because I had just taken a bunch of photos of people with About Face, and this person was asking me just to make this little adjustment on her wrinkles, because people can be, as you well know, super critical of their own looks in a not necessarily positive way, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. I want to get back to your photography.
Yeah.
Peter, you founded your photography, Peter Istvan Photography, in 2016, but you do another kind thing, a kind act, I should say. You go into care facilities and you take headshots of people that are in facilities.
Yeah.
That is so kind of you to do. And what motivated you to do that?
So when my studio, I rent a small studio space, but before I moved into my studio space, my studio was in my house, and it was a couple flights up the stairs, and this was back in 2019. I had my parents were over for dinner, and at this point, I still am, but at that point I was certainly, hey, anybody in front of my camera I would, because it was good practice. So at that time, I had I got my mom and dad up to the studio. My dad was a little ornery that day, and he was complaining the whole way going up, 3 flights of stairs, whatever. I took a bunch of photos of him, and he was saying, "Why are you taking so many photos?" Anyhow, I got a good photo of him. But then 6 weeks later, so this was back in 2019, he passed away. And I remember thinking, well, geez, I was really grateful that I had a great photo of my dad. And I also had some really nice photos of my mom as well. And I thought, well, maybe other people might like to have great photos of their parents, and mom, dad, grandparent, loved one. And at the time, my parents were at a retirement home here in Parry Sound. My mom's still there. I contacted the director, said, "Hey, would you be interested in a complimentary sort of photo shoot day?" Back, back to the days of the school photo thing, but do that like a resident photo day. And they were down for that. So we did it, I guess 3 years ago now, the first one. So my wife came with me, Kathleen, which was wonderful for a couple of reasons. One, she just helped with the logistics of people showing up at the times or not, but also she took an opportunity to capture some of just a few questions about their story, the past life, because everyone has a story, and the stories from this generation are so rich with things that our younger generations will have a difficult. It just was amazing. And I also had the opportunity, before I took the photo, just as we described earlier, chat with them a little bit. And there was this one lady, Phyllis, she was 100 years old at the time. I was taking her photo, and she was telling me about when she was 20, so 80 years ago, she had gone over to England and met a boy, and they met, and he decided to come over back to Canada. And she was describing the time where she was waiting at the pier, and I think it was Montreal, I can't 100% remember, waiting for this guy to come off the ship. And then as she was describing this story, it was like she was there 20 years ago. Like, you can just imagine her face just lighting up with joy telling this story. So it was wonderful to capture photos of these people and hear the stories. And then through that, of course, the families of the people that are in retirement, they love having a great keepsake photo of their loved one. And so it's been rewarding on many different levels to be involved with this and get this started. And hopefully we might try and get other retirement or other photographers and other retirement homes to do it, wherever. It would be kind of fun.
That is so important, Peter, and you're right. That we can learn from the older generation, rich in stories. It's so important to have that beautiful photo. Yeah. And I could tell you from my own experience, when my mother died, she just died in March, we were like, do we have a good picture? Yeah. And my brother took a picture and cropped it so that it looked, you could just see my mom's face. But how nice is it to have a photograph, whether if you have, a wake, or even if you don't, you just, if you go to the home and visit, you could display your loved one's picture. It's so important to have that. And do you, by any chance, to like a video story, capture someone's life story?
Yeah, I don't, but I've come across over my time, certainly there are people out there that do that as a business for sure. I just don't do that. Yeah. I'm just photos.
Oh, okay. I did interview someone who does that, but I was just wondering if you did that. Yeah. But the photos are so important. And of course, for business, if you want a professional business picture, that's also important, up to date. And there's many reasons to have professional photographs taken. And I had to ask you, because you are one busy guy, how did you get interested in beekeeping?
Well, that was about 10 years ago. A friend of mine said, "Hey, do you want to be a beekeeper, or do you want to get bees?" And I said, "Okay, sure. What's involved?" And 10 years later, here we are. So it was really through my friend that I blame, so to speak, that he got me involved with beekeeping. And that's been certainly a great journey as well. just to learn about bees and things like that. But a couple of years ago, when I was in a different position here in Parry Sound, we created a community apiary. So an apiary being a collection of hives, and because it was attached to an education facility, we were able to use it as a community resource. So we did it in a couple different ways, where we would actually teach a beekeeping course to anybody who was interested, but then we also used it as an education program for schools. So we would invite, or any teacher could bring their class up. Fortunately, some of the schools are within walking distance, so you can imagine, 20 kids coming up, grade 2 or 3 coming up. We would show them. We'd do a little presentation on bees, just some basic facts, and we'd go out and look at the bees, and then we'd come in for honey tasting, and we'd get them all jacked up on sugar, and then send them back to school. So it was awesome. And then we also did it for, some people did it as a corporate event, even just to have the sort of a beekeeping experience. So it was a wonderful resource to be involved with. And so now, but that was a few years ago, and now, I just have a couple of hives that I keep on my property here in Parry Sound, and the honey, I don't sell it. It's not like I'm doing it to sell it, but I just give it away to friends. Or if I have honey available and you come into my studio for a headshot, at the end you get a little jar of headshot honey as a little client appreciation gift. So it's been wonderful to be involved with beekeeping over the years, for sure, Betsy.
That's amazing. I was friends with someone who was a beekeeper, and he sent me his the honey that his bees made, and it was really good. I eat honey every day. I put a teaspoon in with apple cider vinegar and warm water and cinnamon, and I didn't realize how important bees are to the environment with pollinating, the flowers and the fruits. I learned a lot because bees, I don't know if it was like global or in the U.S., but bees were dying, and they didn't know why.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other conversation. Yes, there's over the years certainly lots of media about bees dying, but part of our education when we're talking to students is that yes, honeybees are important, but they're one of many pollinators. So it's more stepping back and looking at all the different pollinators involved with pollination, and that there's some challenges. Honeybees get a lot of the glory because they make honey, but it's really the concern for all pollinators out there that help with our food supply. And it's it depends what number you read, but something like 2/3 of our food sources are you need pollination of some kind, whether it be a honeybee or any other kind of pollinator, so we have the food. And yes, so that was part of our message. And part of our other message was you don't have to be a beekeeper to help. There's a couple things you can do. Is one, not use pesticides. Plant something in your garden, and then also support local beekeepers if you can, and through buying their honey or things like that. So those are 3 things you can do actively today if you want to help sort of support pollination and the beekeeping business wherever you are.
That's good to know. I know in my local supermarket, they do have some honey that is made in New Jersey from New Jersey beekeepers. I try to get that if I can, because they said it helps with local allergies if you have honey from your area. Oh, I thought that was interesting.
Yep. That's what they say. That's what they say, Betsy. That's what they say.
I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard. And I have to ask you this question as I wrap it up. What is and I did see it on your website, the virtual reality project. That's amazing.
Yeah, so with another hat that I wear in the healthcare world, this was just before COVID. There's a branch of the government here in Ontario that's called the Seniors Community Fund. So it's an opportunity for you to write in with an idea that you have and get some funding to help launch that idea if it meets all the criteria. So this was just before COVID. We thought, well, what if we created a virtual reality project. So the concept was, instead of seniors going out into the world, that we would bring the world to them. Because I'm not sure if you ever had the opportunity to have a virtual reality experience. So it's those big goggles that you've seen photos on stuck on your face. And we applied, and we actually got the grants, but because during the time of COVID, of course, nothing much was happening, so we had to delay it. So the way it works, Betsy, is through the grant that we got, we were able to purchase it's actually through a licensing agreement through this company, which is from the U.S., that you get the headset. So we had 3 headsets, and then it comes with all the programming. And then we're able to hire a person. So we called her, her name is Val. She's an awesome person, a VR reality coordinator. So she would contact, and it was geared for the the retirement homes in Parry Sound, as well as the long-term care homes / nursing homes. And really it was to create another activity for the seniors who are in those homes to do. So, for example, bingos at 1 o'clock, puzzles at 2 o'clock, then virtual reality at 3 o'clock. And it was set up as an activity like that. But it's been a tremendous success on so many different levels that some of them, we wouldn't have even anticipated. And that is, for example, just the relived experiences that many of the seniors have through the VR. For example, there was Keith is his name. I think he was a fighter pilot back in the day, and he could relive being in a fighter jet, which was pretty cool. Or people wanting to go on a canal boat in Venice or Amsterdam, and they never had the opportunity to do it. So now they plunk on this VR mask, and they can literally float down a canal in Venice. Or we've had a couple people climb Mount Everest, and just on and on and on again. And, we've had anecdotal reports from some of the staff members that, after this, the resident had this VR experience, the slightly different person, whether it be have more energy, whether they're more engaged. And there's just the social aspect of it, too, that was important, where you can imagine, 10 people come to the 3 o'clock VR session, and they're just chatting about their experiences. Well, what did you see? What did you do? And they share. So there's a social element to it as well. And it does have the technology where you could wear the set, and then that could be projected to a screen. So you could all participate in someone climbing Mount Everest if you wanted. So there's so many great stories, and our coordinator Val has just experienced it over and over and over again about the enjoyment and satisfaction that it brings to the seniors who are, in many cases, I mentioned Mount Everest. There's one lady, she's in a wheelchair, and I actually got a note from her son saying, this is such an incredible experience that my mom, who was in a wheelchair for the last 10 years, was able to climb Mount Everest. So it's things like that. So it's just a little bit of joy in someone's life on this day that this VR experience has brought to them. So it really has been a fun project to be involved with.
That is amazing. That must make you feel good. Like you're bringing joy to people. That is incredible. I was very impressed when I watched the video of it. I was like, wow, that is amazing. And can you explain to me, because I never heard of fat biking, what's the difference between that and like regular, biking?
Yeah, so the fat biking doesn't refer to the size of the rider. So it's as you might guess, there's lots of different bikes. You've maybe heard of a road bike, a mountain bike, a cross bike, a gravel bike, and then there's fat bike. So the fat bike is the tire. Well, the biggest difference, of course, is the tire. It's much wider than a regular road bike, for example. It's probably 3 or 4 or 5 times wider than a road tire. And so what that allows you to do, well, there's a couple different uses. You can ride on, I think, some of the beaches across the world that have firm sand. You can hop on that. It just makes it easier to ride. But it was really designed, I think it was originated out of Alaska. I'm probably wrong on that, to ride in the winter, on the snow. So it's a sport that's super fun to be out in the winter, because where we live, we have good winters. Well, good winters in the sense of being cold and snow, so there's another opportunity to embrace winter and be outside. I certainly enjoy fat biking. I think one of my claims to fame is I was probably the first fat biker here in Parry Sound in 2013. And I remember bringing it to the ski club here. We have a local ski club that was cross-country trails. Hey, can I ride on the trails? And, well, it was a lot of politics, but here we are 11 years later where we have dedicated fat bike trails and a small community of fat bike riders that really enjoy it. So long answer to your question, but it's a different kind of bike, wider tire that just allows you to ride on snow, packed snow or sand, or, for example, on a beach wherever you might live.
Wow, I was wondering what that was because I never heard of it before. But you know what, folks? That's why I love doing my show, because I learn all the time from my guests something new. And now I found out what fat biking was. But the video that you have on YouTube, and I highly recommend people to watch it, it's just beautiful. I mean, the area is beautiful. I live in New Jersey, so there's no empty spaces like in your video. And I'm like, wow, he's like biking and there's nothing around. But it looks beautiful. And Peter, I can't thank you enough for coming on my show and for all that you do for your fellow human beings. You are a great human. You are, I'm going to say you're the man of the hour. You really have such a compassion to help people, and it really shows through. And I want to thank you for being who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you, Betsy. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for all the things that you're doing. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And how can people get in touch with you, Peter?
Well, the easiest way is through my website, which I'm assuming you'll post on to the show notes.
Right.
But it's basically peteristvanphotography.com.
Oh, great. And folks, I always tell the audience, go on my guest website and find out all the information, because it's impossible to say it all in one interview, but there is a lot about Peter and what he does. And I just highly recommend you going on the website. There's pictures of him with the beekeeping and all the activities that Peter is involved with, and you can read about Peter's background as well. And if you're in that area, get your picture taken. Make an appointment with Peter, because this is heard, in over 170 countries. So if you're going through Parry Sound, look Peter up, and that will be in the blog. And you heard today, Peter. Say your last name, Peter, so I don't mess it up.
Peter Istvan.
Istvan, okay. Peter Istvan. I just want to thank you for coming on again, and I want to thank Jeannie White, who's the station manager who produces the show and writes the blog. All the information about Peter will be in there. And I want to thank Lynn Caldwell, who is CEO of Passion World Talk Radio and makes this all possible. And I want to thank you all, the listeners and subscribers. Thank you for listening. Please share my show. If you don't already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, it is free on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple, just to name a few. I'm here to help you. I'm here to inform you about resources, and Peter Istvan is a great resource. Just, find out what people are doing. Find out how to get involved in some of these causes. And that's what I have to say. And as I always say, if you want to follow me, I am on Facebook, Betsy E. Wurzel, W-U-R-Z-E-L. And if you're looking for a support group, I have #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement on Facebook. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind and shine your light bright, because we need it now more than ever. And Peter, you do just that. You shine your light bright. And thank you again for all that you do, because you do so much. And folks, I can't impress enough. Look up the beautiful, stunning headshots. They are amazing. I love looking at them. As a matter of fact, I do. If I don't look at them every day, it's like every other day. I want to see the pictures. That's
awesome,
my curiosity. But that's it for today. This is Betsy Wurzel. You're a host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Chat with you soon. Bye-bye.